The Bermuda Triangle does not appear on any official nautical chart. No government has ever declared its borders. Yet for more than half a century, this stretch of the western North Atlantic has held a place in the human imagination as a region where the ordinary rules of the sea seem to bend. Its three legendary points form a loose triangle: Miami on the sun-drenched coast of Florida, the isolated coral atolls of Bermuda rising from the deep blue far to the northeast, and the bustling harbor of San Juan, Puerto Rico, to the south. Between these anchors lies an area whose size shifts depending on who draws the lines. Some accounts describe a compact zone of roughly 500,000 square miles. Others expand it dramatically to nearly 1.5 million square miles, sometimes stretching the edges toward the distant Azores or the Gulf of Mexico. The classic image remains the same: a vast, roughly equilateral expanse of open ocean, roughly centered at coordinates around 25 degrees north, 71 degrees west. At its core floats the Sargasso Sea, a unique oceanic realm defined not by coastlines, but by the slow, circular dance of four great currents. The warm Gulf Stream rushes northward along its western edge. The North Atlantic Current sweeps east, the Canary Current flows south, and the North Equatorial Current pushes west. In the calm eye of this gyre, golden mats of sargassum seaweed drift in endless fields, creating the illusion of a living meadow suspended upon the waves. Christopher Columbus sailed these waters in 1492 and noted strange glowing lights and erratic compass behavior, observations that would later feed the legend. The waters here plunge to extraordinary depths, reaching more than 30,000 feet in places, yet they are fringed by treacherous shallows and jagged coral reefs, especially near the Bahamas and the Florida Keys. This is no remote wilderness. It is one of the busiest maritime corridors on the planet. Cargo ships laden with goods, luxury cruise liners, private yachts, fishing fleets, and military vessels cross these waters daily. Commercial airliners trace predictable routes high overhead between North America, the Caribbean, and Europe. The name Bermuda Triangle itself carries a poetic menace, evoking lonely ships adrift beneath empty skies and silent horizons. In truth, its geography is both ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary in its heavy traffic and predictable shipping lanes, extraordinary in the way its currents, depths, and weather systems can conspire to test the limits of human confidence and technology. Here, the ocean feels alive, watchful and vast enough to hide its secrets forever. Beneath the deceptively calm surface of the Bermuda Triangle, a restless engine of nature is always at work. This is a region where the ocean and atmosphere dance in powerful, sometimes violent harmony. Dominating the western boundary is the Gulf Stream, a massive river of warm water surging northward from the tropics at speeds that can reach 6 knots or more. It carries enormous heat toward the colder latitudes, but its passage also breeds sudden and dramatic weather shifts. A bright, clear morning can dissolve within minutes into towering thunderheads and howling winds. Microbursts, violent downdrafts of cold air descending from storm clouds, can slam into the sea like invisible hammers, whipping up walls of water 30 feet high or more in seconds. Rogue waves, once dismissed as the exaggerations of frightened sailors, are now known to form here with terrifying frequency. Satellite observations and measurements from oil platforms have confirmed waves reaching 100 feet in height, their steep faces capable of smashing a ship's hull to splinters in a single catastrophic blow. These monsters often appear without warning when storm systems from different directions converge, their energies focusing into one overwhelming surge. The triangle sits squarely in the path of Atlantic hurricane season. Tropical storms spin up from the warm Caribbean waters and race northward, their sustained winds screaming past 150 miles per hour. Before the era of satellite forecasting and advanced modeling, mariners often sailed directly into these tempests with little or no warning. Even today, the sea can rise with frightening speed. In the heart of the region lies the Sargasso Sea, where thick golden mats of sargassum seaweed drift in slow, hypnotic patterns. In calm conditions, these floating fields can foul propellers and create the eerie impression of a vessel trapped in a golden, living prison. When the winds die completely, sailing ships can lie becalmed for days, their crews slowly succumbing to thirst, heat, and despair under a merciless sun. Deeper still, the continental shelf holds vast deposits of methane hydrate, ice-like crystals of gas locked under high pressure and low temperature. Some researchers once speculated that sudden releases of these gases could create massive bubbles, dramatically reducing the density of seawater and causing ships to plunge straight to the bottom. While such events are geologically possible, extensive surveys have found no evidence linking massive eruptions to the major disappearances of the 20th century. The seafloor here has remained relatively stable for millennia. These forces do not make the Bermuda Triangle uniquely cursed. They simply make it a place where nature's power is displayed with vivid, uncompromising clarity. The ocean here is not a passive backdrop. It is a living force, ancient, restless, and capable of reminding even the most confident navigator that the sea owes humanity no mercy and keeps its own counsel. The stories emerge from the archives like ghosts from the mist, each one carrying the same eerie signature: sudden silence, no distress call answered, and an ocean that swallows every trace. One of the earliest and most devastating cases remains the disappearance of the USS Cyclops in March 1918. This massive Navy collier, nearly 550 feet long and displacing almost 20,000 tons, departed Barbados on March 4th, heavily laden with 11,000 tons of manganese ore essential for wartime steel production. She carried 306 men and officers, including her eccentric captain, Lieutenant Commander George Worley. The ship radioed her position once after leaving port. Then she vanished. No wreckage, no lifeboats, no bodies were ever recovered. To this day, the loss of the Cyclops stands as the single largest non-combat loss of life in U.S. Navy history. Theories range from structural failure under the weight of her cargo to a rogue wave or even mutiny, but no definitive answer has ever surfaced. 27 years later, on the afternoon of December 5, 1945, a routine training flight lifted off from the Naval Air Station at Fort Lauderdale, Florida. 5 Grumman TBM Avenger torpedo bombers, Flight 19, carried 14 men into the clear blue sky. The mission was straightforward: practice bombing runs and navigation over the Bahamas. Lieutenant Charles Taylor, the flight leader and an experienced pilot, soon reported trouble. His compasses were malfunctioning. "We don't know which way is west," he radioed. "Everything is wrong. Strange." The ocean below looked unfamiliar to the crew. They argued over their position, believing at one point they were over the Florida Keys when they were actually hundreds of miles east, flying deeper into the open Atlantic. As fuel ran critically low, the Avengers turned and searched, their transmissions growing more desperate. "We can't find west. We don't know where we are." Then the voices fell silent. A massive search operation was launched immediately. Among the rescuers was a Martin PBM Mariner flying boat with 13 crew members aboard. It too vanished. Witnesses on a nearby ship reported seeing a bright explosion in the sky around the time the Mariner would have been in the area, likely the highly volatile fuel-laden aircraft igniting in mid-air. Despite one of the largest air-sea searches ever mounted, not a single piece of wreckage, life raft, or body from Flight 19 or the Mariner was ever found. The Navy's official report eventually cited causes or reasons unknown, though later analyses pointed to navigational disorientation, compass error, and fuel exhaustion after the flight flew far off course. Barely 2 years after Flight 19, on January 30, 1948, a British South American Airways Avro Tudor 4 airliner named Star Tiger took off from the Azores bound for Bermuda. The aircraft carried 31 people, including passengers and crew. The captain radioed that all was well and the weather was good. Then, silence. No distress signal, no wreckage. A thorough search found nothing. Almost exactly 1 year later, on January 17, 1949, her sister ship, Star Ariel, disappeared on a flight from Bermuda to Jamaica. Again, the conditions seemed perfect. Again, the aircraft and its 20 occupants simply ceased to exist in the records of the living. Other cases haunt the ledger with equal poignancy. In 1921, the 5-masted schooner Carroll A. Deering was discovered hard aground on the treacherous shoals of Diamond Shoals off Cape Hatteras, North Carolina, technically on the fringe of the triangle's broader definitions. The ship was intact, but her entire crew had vanished. Meals remained half-eaten on the table. The navigational equipment was missing, and the vessel appeared to have been deliberately run aground. No trace of the sailors was ever found. In December 1925, the SS Cotopaxi, a bulk carrier loaded with coal, sent a desperate SOS reporting that she was listing and taking on water. Then, nothing. The ship and her crew of 32 disappeared completely. Decades later, the wreck would be identified far from the triangle's usual boundaries, but the story had already become woven into the growing legend. On December 22, 1967, a 23-foot cabin cruiser named Witchcraft left Miami Harbor for a short evening cruise to view the Christmas lights along the shoreline. Aboard were hotelier Dan Barak and his friend Father Patrick Horgan. Just after 9 p.m., Barak radioed the Coast Guard in a strangely calm voice. "I've been attacked by an unknown force. We are taking on water. Come quickly." When a rescue vessel arrived at the reported position only 19 minutes later, the Witchcraft was gone. No debris, no oil slick, nothing. The sea was calm. The mystery of those final words has never been resolved. These are only the most famous chapters. Smaller vessels, private planes, and lone yachts have added their names to the litany across the decades. Each disappearance carried the same chilling hallmarks: abrupt loss of contact, no wreckage in an era when floating debris should have been visible, and an ocean that returned to its serene blue indifference within hours. The sea, it seemed, had simply opened its mouth and closed it again, leaving the world to wonder. Yet even as the stories accumulated, investigators began to notice patterns that pointed not to the supernatural, but to the brutal arithmetic of the sea. Many incidents occurred during or just after severe weather. Others involved vessels or aircraft operating at the extreme edge of their range or capabilities. Human error, mechanical failure, and the immense scale of the ocean itself, where a small search area can be rendered irrelevant by powerful currents within hours, emerged as recurring explanations. Still, the silence that followed each vanishing was profound enough to fuel endless speculation. The Bermuda Triangle had begun to earn its reputation as a place where ships and planes could slip from the world without a trace, leaving only questions drifting on the empty horizon. Science approaches the Bermuda Triangle not with fear, but with quiet determination to understand the forces at play. Beneath the romantic veil of legend lies a region shaped by powerful, well-documented natural processes and the limits of human endeavor. The Gulf Stream remains the most consistent actor in many incidents. This swift, warm current races northward like a hidden river within the ocean, capable of carrying floating debris, or even a disabled vessel, dozens of miles off course in just a few hours. A plane that ditches or a ship that founders can drift far beyond any initial search area before rescue teams arrive. The current's warmth also fuels rapid weather changes. Clear skies can give way to violent thunderstorms in minutes, spawning microbursts that hammer the sea surface with devastating downdrafts. Rogue waves add another layer of peril. Once considered maritime myth, these towering walls of water, sometimes exceeding 100 feet, have been recorded and measured in this region. They form when wave trains from different directions converge and reinforce one another, creating a single monstrous crest capable of overwhelming even large ships in an instant. Satellite data and oil platform sensors have confirmed their existence, turning sailors' tales into verified oceanography. Hurricanes and tropical storms carve predictable yet deadly paths through the triangle. Before the age of satellites and advanced computer modeling, captains often sailed blind into these tempests. Even today, the sudden intensification of a storm can catch smaller vessels unprepared. The vastness of the open water compounds the problem. When something goes wrong, the search area becomes enormous, and powerful currents scatter wreckage quickly or drag it to the depths. One theory that once captured scientific attention involves methane hydrates, ice-like crystals of gas trapped in sediments along the continental shelf. A sudden large release could, in theory, create massive bubbles that reduce the density of seawater, causing a ship to lose buoyancy and sink rapidly. Methane in the atmosphere might also interfere with engines or instruments. While dramatic and geologically possible, extensive seafloor surveys have found no evidence of catastrophic eruptions coinciding with major historical disappearances. The ocean floor in the triangle has been relatively stable for thousands of years. Compass and navigational anomalies receive frequent mention. The region lies near the agonic line, where magnetic north and true north roughly align, causing ordinary magnetic compasses to behave unpredictably if not properly adjusted. Yet this is a known, mapped feature of Earth's magnetic field, not a paranormal force. Modern pilots and mariners account for it as routine. In the days before reliable gyro compasses and GPS, however, such variations could contribute to disorientation, especially when combined with fatigue, poor visibility, or instrument failure. Human factors often prove decisive. Fatigue, overconfidence, mechanical breakdowns, and simple navigational error appear repeatedly in official reports. Flight 19, for example, shows a classic cascade: compass issues, misidentification of position, continued flight away from land, and eventual fuel exhaustion. The rescue aircraft sent after them likely suffered a fuel explosion, a known risk with that particular airframe. Insurance giants like Lloyd's of London and official bodies such as the U.S. Coast Guard and NOAA have examined the statistics for decades. Their consistent finding is straightforward. The rate of losses in the Bermuda Triangle is no higher than in any other heavily trafficked stretch of ocean of similar size. The area sees enormous traffic, thousands of commercial flights, and countless vessels each year. When volume is high, incidents occur. The sea claims lives through the combined forces of nature and human fallibility, not through supernatural intervention. Science does not diminish the tragedy of those lost. It simply places the events in their proper context. A powerful, restless ocean where storms rage, currents flow, and waves can rise without warning. The triangle is not cursed. It is simply the sea, beautiful, indifferent, and governed by laws we continue to study and respect. Even as science offers clear explanations, the human imagination refuses to let go. The Bermuda Triangle has become a canvas onto which we project our deepest wonderings about the unknown, ancient civilizations, other dimensions, visitors from the stars. One of the most enduring legends ties the region to the lost continent of Atlantis. Some believe the fabled advanced civilization lies submerged beneath these waters, its crystal-powered technology still active and interfering with modern ships and planes. The underwater limestone formation known as the Bimini Road has been cited as possible evidence of Atlantean highways, though geologists identify it as natural beach rock shaped by ordinary coastal processes. Others speak of time warps or dimensional portals, rifts in reality that swallow vessels and transport them to other eras or parallel universes. Pilots and sailors have occasionally described sudden banks of electronic fog or strange clouds that seem to distort time and space. One often cited account involves a private pilot who claimed to have flown through such a phenomenon and emerged with his clocks mysteriously advanced. Extraterrestrial theories remain popular. Glowing lights reported by Christopher Columbus and later witnesses are sometimes interpreted as UFO activity. In this version of the story, alien craft or underwater bases use advanced technology to abduct ships and planes, perhaps for study or some unknowable purpose. Government conspiracy narratives occasionally surface, suggesting secret military testing at facilities like the Atlantic Undersea Test and Evaluation Center, AUTEC, near Andros Island, involves reverse-engineered alien technology. Sea monsters and malevolent forces from the deep also appear in older sailor lore. Giant squids, ancient gods angered by human intrusion, or ghostly fleets crewed by the damned. The Sargasso Sea's floating golden weed once fueled tales of ships forever trapped in a living graveyard, their crews reduced to skeletons. These stories endure because they speak to something primal. In an age when satellites map the ocean floor and GPS guides every journey, the Triangle offers one of the last pockets where mystery feels plausible. The silence after a disappearance, the absence of wreckage, the calm sea returning within hours, leaves space for wonder. We want to believe that not every question has been answered, that the ocean still holds secrets capable of humbling our technology and our certainty. The myths are not merely entertainment. They reflect our enduring fascination with the boundary between the known and the unknowable. They comfort us, in a strange way, by suggesting that some losses cannot be explained by ordinary failure or bad luck. They transform tragedy into something larger, more cosmic. Yet the shadows they cast are long. For every factual analysis, a new theory emerges online or in late-night documentaries, keeping the legend alive. The Bermuda Triangle, in this sense, is less a place on the map and more a mirror, reflecting humanity's persistent hunger for the extraordinary amid the everyday dangers of the sea. The modern legend of the Bermuda Triangle was not born on the waves. It was born in print, amplified by radio, and immortalized on screen. The spark came in 1964 when writer Vincent Gaddis published an article titled "The Deadly Bermuda Triangle" in Argosy magazine. He linked Flight 19 and other losses into a single, compelling pattern, giving the region its now famous name. The piece resonated. 2 years earlier, a small article in Fate magazine had already begun sketching the outlines of a mystery zone off America's back door. The firestorm arrived in 1974 with Charles Berlitz's bestseller, The Bermuda Triangle. The book sold millions of copies, weaving supernatural threads through every disappearance. Berlitz, a gifted storyteller from a famous language school family, presented the incidents with dramatic flair. Minor details were sometimes altered, weather reports downplayed, and mundane explanations omitted. The public response was enormous. Suddenly, the Triangle was everywhere, on talk shows, in newspapers, and in breathless documentaries. Other books followed quickly. Richard Weiner's The Devil's Triangle, John Spencer's Limbo of the Lost. Each added new layers to the lore. Television specials dramatized empty ships and silent cockpits. Hollywood contributed with films that borrowed real incidents, blending them with science fiction elements. The 1977 blockbuster Close Encounters of the Third Kind even featured the rediscovered SS Cotopaxi, cementing the Triangle's place in popular culture. Sensational headlines sold papers and magazines. Stories of ghost ships and vanishing planes were far more compelling than dry reports of mechanical failure or storms. Incidents that occurred well outside the Triangle's loose boundaries were pulled into the narrative. Dates were occasionally shifted, and successful voyages through the same waters were ignored. The myth became self-reinforcing. Every new report seemed to confirm the curse. Larry Cushé, a research librarian and pilot, pushed back in 1975 with the Bermuda Triangle mystery solved. He meticulously examined original records and found exaggerated claims, unverifiable details, and selective storytelling. Yet his measured voice struggled to compete with Berlitz's bestseller status. The legend had already taken on a life of its own. Media did what the ocean could not. It made the triangle immortal. It transformed a region of busy sea lanes and ordinary maritime risks into a global icon of the unexplained. Even today, new documentaries and online videos revisit the stories, keeping the cinematic glow of mystery alive long after the factual record has spoken. Today, the Bermuda Triangle faces its greatest challenge, not from rogue waves or sudden storms, but from the unrelenting gaze of modern science and technology. Advanced mapping tools have transformed our understanding of these waters. Multi-beam sonar, autonomous underwater vehicles, and high-resolution satellite altimetry have scanned the seafloor with unprecedented precision. No hidden anomalies, no vast methane eruptions, no remnants of lost civilizations have emerged. The ocean floor here tells a story of geological stability spanning thousands of years. Navigation technology has rewritten the rules of survival. GPS provides pinpoint accuracy where once compasses could falter along the agonic line. Inertial navigation systems, gyro compasses, real-time satellite weather feeds, and automatic identification systems, AIS, on ships ensure that vessels and aircraft are rarely truly lost. Emergency locator beacons transmit distress signals instantly, while search and rescue operations draw on coordinated global networks far beyond the capabilities of earlier decades. Researchers have returned to the original records with fresh eyes. Australian scientist Carl Kruszelnicki, echoing the work of Larry Cushy in the 1970s, has repeatedly shown that the percentage of incidents in the triangle matches global averages for heavily trafficked waters. NOAA states clearly, there is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur with any greater frequency here than in any other large, well-traveled stretch of ocean. Lloyd's of London, the world's leading marine insurer, reached the same conclusion decades ago and continues to underwrite voyages through the region without special premiums. Recent oceanographic studies reinforce natural explanations. Converging storm systems from north and south, combined with disturbances from the Florida coast, can generate rogue waves reaching 30 meters or more, powerful enough to overwhelm vessels in moments. Human error, mechanical failure, and the sheer volume of traffic explain the rest. The U.S. Coast Guard and Navy have consistently dismissed supernatural claims, pointing instead to the combined forces of nature and fallibility. The debunking is not dismissive of tragedy. Every loss remains a profound human story. Yet the data reveals a simple truth. The Bermuda Triangle is busy, sometimes dangerous, but not uniquely cursed. Technology has lifted much of the veil, revealing the region not as a portal to the unknown, but as part of the vast living Atlantic, governed by the same laws that shape every ocean on Earth. Cruise ships glide through these waters daily, their decks alive with laughter and music under clear skies. Massive container vessels follow reliable shipping lanes, their AIS signals glowing steadily on satellite screens. Private pilots file routine flight plans with confidence, while commercial airliners trace predictable arcs high overhead. The sea remains powerful, storms still gather, waves still rise, but human knowledge and technology have largely tamed its once mysterious bite. Tourists still visit Bermuda, the Bahamas, and Florida's coast, seeking the thrill of legend. Dockside shops sell books and souvenirs, emblazoned with vanishing ships and ghostly planes. New documentaries and online videos revisit the old stories, keeping the cinematic glow alive. The name Bermuda Triangle endures as a cultural shorthand for the unexplained, yet the reality is far more ordinary. Modern records show no spike in unexplained losses. Insurance data, government statistics, and scientific consensus align. This is a busy maritime crossroads where the occasional tragedy stems from the same causes seen worldwide: weather, error, and the immense scale of the ocean. The myth persists not because of fresh evidence, but because of humanity's enduring love for wonder. The triangle today stands as a mirror. On one side, the hard light of facts, satellites overhead, sonar below, and data that strips away superstition. On the other, the soft haze of legend, Stories whispered across generations, inviting us to imagine what might still lie beyond our instruments. In quiet moments, when the horizon blurs at dusk and the radio crackles faintly, the old pull returns. The sea has not changed. We have. We now possess the tools to navigate it safely, yet we still feel the ancient tug of mystery. The Bermuda Triangle reminds us that even in an age of certainty, some corners of the world and of the human heart prefer to keep a little shadow.